coming up on One Detroit. We'll take you inside the iconic Michigan Central Station to see the results of a 6-year restoration project by Ford Motor Company. Plus, musician Brian Blade talks about his role as Detroit Jazz Festival artist in residence. Also ahead, a look at how restaurants in Michigan serve various versions of iconic Coney Island hot dogs. And we'll give you some ideas on how you can spend this weekend. It's all coming up next on One Detroit.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit PBS.
DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit PBS. Among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving, we support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Learn more at dtefoundation.com.
Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you.
Just ahead on One Detroit. Award-winning drummer Brian Blade talks about his love of jazz and this year's Detroit Jazz Festival. Plus, we'll show you how the Coney Island hot dog looks different in cities across the state. And Peter Whorf from 90.9 WRCJ shares some fun events taking place in Metro Detroit this weekend. But first up, a long-vacant Detroit landmark reopened today. The Michigan Central Station was a hub for train travelers before it closed more than 30 years ago. Now, it has undergone a massive restoration by Ford Motor Company. Once a symbol of the city's decay, the iconic building now symbolizes the future of mobility and innovation. One Detroit took a tour with Michigan Central CEO Josh Seifman and head of place Melissa Dittmer, who leads planning, design, construction, and development of places and spaces in Michigan Central. For 3 decades, the Michigan Central train station sat vacant in Detroit, falling into deep decay. Then, in 2018, Ford Motor Company purchased the station. Ford invited One Detroit to Corktown to see the transformation Michigan Central Station has undergone.
Everything has been restored to, as best possible, to what its original condition is. Often talk now about that the building is in some ways in its most pristine condition, in some ways ever.
We took out 3.5 million gallons of water from the station over the first 18 months. Most of that water was in the basement, but some of it just ran inside into various rooms and over the columns like this that led to this sort of wonderful grooved feeling.
That feeling captures the station's history spanning more than a century.
The station was originally designed by the same architects who did New York's Grand Central Station.
Building started occupancy in 1913. The station last passenger rail stopped in 1988. Then sat vacant for 36 years.
The clock position between the Grand Hall and the South Concourse is a prime example of how the restoration aims to merge the past and present.
This historic clock was able to be reproduced because we had original components from the clock itself, not the entirety of it, but components of it, and then working with those historic wood pieces plus the original drawings, we were able to recreate the beautiful clock that will keep us on track as we move forward into the next century.
This portion of the arcade here will be activated with experiential retail, food and beverage, things like that will start in the fall with activity like that happening in the building.
When you approach the station from the park and make your way through the main entry doors, you'll be greeted by the Grand Hall.
Grand Hall is obviously not just probably the most spectacular space here in Detroit, but certainly one of them in the country, if not the world.
It was lined with oak benches that were inset into the floor here, and you can see them remnants of those and what they were. This sort of Gustavino tiled arched ceiling is magnificent. It is clay tile, and There's 29,000 tiles up there, and that's over 8 miles of grout.
When the station was purchased, the Grand Hall's windows were inoperable. The cast iron rosettes and filigrees flanking the windows were removed or decayed. The few that were salvaged were 3D scanned and printed at the Ford manufacturing lab. Before the last stop on our tour, we made our way to the South Concourse. On its surface, it's almost identical to the way it looked in the 1940s, when it serviced nearly 4,000 people a day. But below its surface is modern technology.
We have, for example, in here, in-floor cooling as part of how we will heat and cool this vast space.
We also, in the selection of glass throughout, worked on selecting the right types of glass to reduce cooling loads, and so the building is going to be really future-forward managed machine to keep these sort of costs low and be the most sustainable as possible.
Amid the restoration, Ford set out to honor the station's heyday, but also the time it sat vacant. One example is the graffiti on station walls.
It's also an important chapter in the building's history. In other cases, we've preserved some of the work itself, not connected to the walls anymore, but we will figure out how and where we can exhibit those or incorporate them into the design of spaces within the building.
Has there been thought given to how everything that's going on here is going to be impacting the greater area, the businesses around here, the neighborhoods around here, the people who've been here?
We have extensive relationships with communities around us on all sides, and extensive relationships with the business community. We are very proud of generating a robust amount of business for local businesses.
Part of the goal for Michigan Central Station's revival is to be a global example of what major projects like this can be to the people and places around them.
We want this to be an epicenter of talent, of innovation, of thought, of leadership that pulls together creators, community, innovators, leaders, you name it, into what is really a model for elsewhere and unique, and not just unique in the Detroit context, but in a national and international context.
Today's grand opening of Michigan Central includes a star-studded concert and kicks off a 10-day open house for the public. Let's turn now to another big event for the city, the Detroit Jazz Festival. This year's artist in residence for the Detroit Jazz Festival is acclaimed drummer, composer, and band leader Brian Blade. In addition to performing at the festival over the Labor Day weekend, Blade is taking part in educational initiatives and community outreach programs presented by the Detroit Jazz Festival Foundation. John Penney of 90.9 WRCJ sat down with a two-time Grammy Award-winning musician to talk about his passion for jazz.
Brian Blade as the 2024 Artist in Residence at the 45th Detroit Jazz Festival. It is an honor, a pleasure, and a privilege to sit here and talk to you today after an incredible workshop with students at Wayne State University. You are celebrated as one of the greatest jazz drummers playing today, but I think to call you a jazz drummer doesn't really cut it. It's sort of myopic. Your roots are in the church in Shreveport. Your father was the pastor.
When you talk about the roots and church and the gospel, it really is the root of everything is coming up from. You know, no matter where I find myself, at the school or in that concert hall or in that dive bar, the mission is still the same. You know, touching souls with your conviction and what you feel like your calling is important to me, and the music has to speak that same praise. A dear friend in my hometown, Shreveport, Louisiana, and gives me 2 cassettes when I started driving at age 16 of Joni's music, Hijira and Mingus. So I'm listening to these recordings, you know, these tapes, driving to school. And it's something I've never, didn't grow up with, and it's speaking to me in a big way. And I'd heard Wayne obviously on Weather Report music and with Miles Davis essentially, and his own records, some of the first records I bought. But I could have never seen a head all of a sudden sharing time with my heroes, essentially making music with my heroes.
So today you were here at Wayne State University and running a workshop, and they were playing some challenging material. What was it that you were trying to impart to them? What's that all about?
I was encouraged just to see, everyone playing in a band, like, the students with their instruments and present and not taking the opportunity for granted. Mostly today, I wanted to encourage the rhythm section, and what I hope is that in terms of approach, of seeing things a different way, that it takes them off the page, so like if they can internalize all of that and really be looking not only to Mr. Scott as he's conducting, but to their bandmates, and they can express something else, not just the literal part, like your role, your part in the thing. Yeah, like you're standing in it, you're walking in it, you're giving it so that everyone else can just be that much more strengthened, and we've made something greater than what we actually imagined, because we submitted to each other. And that's, I think, the music, that's when it takes off and it pierces people's hearts, because you've given something, not taken something.
So the whole dynamic has to come to a place where it's like, okay, our pianissimo is truly that. Like it's even more so. And then our dynamics are also much more dramatic and impactful.
So I hope that the students here at Wayne State University, they would also see through the page, so to speak. Read between the lines so that they can inspire something else in the ensemble.
I love that. So, coming up as the artist in residence at the Jazz Festival this year, you're going to have a few performances and bring some sensibilities to it. What can we look forward to?
Well, initially a fellowship band concert. Then I'm collaborating with two dear friends of mine, Edward Simon, pianist from Venezuela, I've known a very long time, and Scott Colley, bassist. We have a project called Three Visitors, appropriately titled for this for this occasion, and feature Becca Stevens, great singer and songwriter, and a string octet composed of Detroit symphonic musicians.
Wonderful.
Looking forward to that, and then a big band that. In its core is the fellowship band conducted by Jim McNeely, and his arrangements of some of my music and John's music for the fellowship band. The fact that this festival is open to the public, free, it's really incredible, to me. In the world, it's unique, not just in the country, I must say. I'm excited about sharing all this with the community here in Detroit.
And Brian Blade had a lot more to say. You can check out his entire interview with John Penney at onedetroitpbs.org. When it comes to things that are truly Detroit, the Coney Island hot dog has to be near the top of the list. There's a lot of history behind Coney Island hot dogs, but did you know the iconic dish is served differently in cities around the state? One Detroit's Bill Kubota reports on the Coney's popularity in Michigan.
Coney, 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 Coney. Truly Detroit, right? Let's serve up things Detroiters might not know about the Coney Island hot dog. Updating a story from Detroit PBS almost 10 years ago.
I know you know about those two Coneys right there at Michigan and Lafayette. The Lafayette and the American. Iconic Motor City cuisine.
Iconic. And I don't use that word very often because some people overuse it, but it really is.
Grace Karras is the third generation owner of American Coney Island. Grace's grandfather Gus actually started it all down on Michigan Avenue back in 1917.
Gus, Greek immigrant, came through Ellis Island, stopped in Coney Island, New York, ate a hot dog there, sold them here, giving us the Detroit-style Coney. But in Michigan, Detroit-style isn't the only one.
I lived in Detroit for 8 years, but Flint Coneys are the best.
See how delicious that is?
I like them, but they don't like me.
The Flint-style Coney. At Starlight Coney Island since 1966 in Burton, just east of Flint, and Gillies on the northern edge of the city since 1985.
How's everything taste so far, guys, okay?
Awesome.
Eaters here say Flint Coney sauce is meatier, and Detroit sauce is soupy.
The chili sauce is wetter down there. Yeah. This is a lot drier. It's got a lot better flavor.
People from the Detroit market really don't understand our Coneys. I think obviously ours are a lot better. Flint Coneys are Flint Coneys, and people from this area know and understand Flint Coneys.
Dave Liskey wrote the book, The Flint Coney, A Savory History.
The Coney became as big as it was because of the auto workers. So the two work hand in hand.
Flint, the vehicle city, General Motors factory town, assembly lines, making cars, and Coneys.
It's kind of an assembly line. It really is. There was times, back in the day, we would serve 3,000-4,000 people a day. And it was one guy staying in a station, does his job, another guy in the station, and it would just get shoved down the line. And it has to be timed perfectly, too. So you need hot food to go out hot.
In this area, well, when I was young, there was lots of Coney Islands.
Flint Coneys, some running 24 hours right next to the car plants. Like the factories, the Coneys have dwindled, although a few still going strong.
Everybody knows what a Coney Island is, so it describes the type of business you are, but you don't pay a franchise fee.
David Gilly got his start working at Starlight. He ran a Coney in nearby Clio in the 1970s before building a new place in Mount Morris.
Everybody says, why don't you just use your name? I goes, Gilly? But Gillies in Texas was big back then. And says, yeah, that's cool.
Welcome to Gillies, the world's largest nightclub.
You real cowboy?
The 80s, the era of the urban cowboy.
Well, it depends on what you think a real cowboy is.
No mechanical bull at this Gillies, no beer or barbecue, but plenty of Coneys.
This guy come to me with, I've been tearing down Ponderosas and I have a whole bunch of country western motif decor you might like. And I was, oh, yeah, that sounds cool.
Gilly, he recently retired, but he likes to visit. His restaurant lives on because he sold it to his employees. The origins of the Flint Coney starts not in Greece, it's Macedonia. Immigrants from the same part of Europe.
The Balkan Wars of 1908, 1913 decimated the area. Greeks and Macedonians were leaving in droves, just going wherever they could.
The original Coney Island started, it was my husband's uncle, George Branoff.
George Branoff and other Macedonians, including one named Simeon Bryan, came to the U.S. and headed west. Before he reached Flint, he had a hot dog in Rochester, New York.
And then he had another one in the Buffalo area and didn't really like it, said it was tasteless, thought he could do better, and based it on a Macedonian stew.
According to Dave Liskey, the Flint-style Coney appeared in the early 1920s, and it seems Macedonians here knew little about the Greeks and their Coney Islands down in Detroit.
We got a lot of sauce on yours, huh?
Absolutely.
That's the way you like it, huh?
Absolutely.
Did you order extra sauce?
Yes, we always do when we come here.
The topping is a ground beef heart that's spiced with cumin and paprika and chili powder, and some minced onion in there as well. And then just topped with yellow mustard and chopped onions.
He said beef heart, ground beef heart.
It's ground smaller than a hamburger, but it's still firm because it's that heart muscle. And if you took hamburger and ground it that small, it'd turn to mush. And it sounds bad to say beef heart, but people don't realize beef heart's your only organ in your body that is a muscle. And it's a really lean, solid muscle meat.
That beef heart, common in Detroit-style Coney sauce too. Maybe you knew that. Detroit-style, Flint-style, a preference? Probably just what you're used to. Then there's Lansing, a bipartisan approach to these contrasting Coney cultures.
We offer both the Detroit version Coney and the Flint version.
Dominic McGaldy runs Sparty's Coney Island.
You know, being the halfway point, we get people coming from Flint, come from Detroit. You know, it's really about 50-50 between the two, honestly.
We got our world's famous Detroit Coney Island sauce and our famous Flint meaty sauce. And even for the customers, if they want to mix together, we call it a Saginaw.
Saginaw? Lest we forget Jackson, Michigan, and the Jackson-style Coney. Down by the train station, there's Jackson Coney Island and Virginia Coney Island.
Come here often?
Oh yeah, like every day.
Every day?
Every day.
Jackson, birthplace of the Republican Party, and some might say the birthplace of the Michigan Coney. A few years before the Coney Island appeared in Detroit.
1914 is the year that we officially consider the Virginia Coney Island to become into existence.
Joe Matthews owns Virginia Coney Island, where the original owners came from Macedonia too. A few stores over, the competition.
I got 3 dogs coming back.
Jackson Coney Island, where Brittany Craig is in charge.
Thank you.
Long ago, both Virginia and Jackson were owned by the same family.
I've heard all kinds of different stories. I wasn't here in 1914, so I can't confirm any of them.
From what I understand, the documentation was destroyed at City Hall when they had a fire like years ago.
Compare this to Detroit with its iconic Lafayette and American Coney Islands, originally owned by Greek brothers turned rivals.
That's the similar story that we had here, yes. The Macedonian brothers apparently could not see eye to eye on whatever the issue was. So the one left and started the other one.
The Coney sauce here, a two-step process.
We'll take some meat, drain some of the juices, put it in.
Getting the consistency right is key.
And we mix it up.
The Jackson Coney tastes a lot like Flint, according to Coney advocate Dave Liskey, who leaves us with some sage advice.
It's a state of mind. I eat Coneys all over the country. Have the Coney that you like, but also enjoy the other ones just like you would with pizza and hamburgers. When in Flint, have a Flint Coney. When in Detroit, have a Detroit Coney. When in Jackson, same thing.
There's a lot going on in the Metro Detroit area this weekend. From fairs and festivals to a sports-themed event, there's something for everyone. Here's Peter Whorf of 90.9 WRCJ with today's One Detroit Weekend.
Hi, I'm Peter Whorf with 90.9 WRCJ. Excited to tell you about some great events we have going on this weekend and beyond in the Metro Detroit area. And you better believe there are some great summer festivals heading our way, like today through Sunday when Melvindale Ice Arena plays host to Melvindale Days. The fair includes carnival rides, delicious food, live entertainment, and it's topped off by a magnificent fireworks display. Friday through the 9th is the first ever Detroit Sports Spectacular at the Suburban Collection Showplace, where fans can have memorabilia signed by sports legends Barry Sanders, Ben Wallace, Kirk Gibson, and Donovan Edwards. Just some of the incredible athletes scheduled to be there. If art is more your thing, Friday through Sunday is the Pewabic House and Garden Show at Pewabic Pottery. The event includes strolling tours, wheel throwing demos, and sculpting demos. And if you're searching for the luck of the Irish, look no further than Greenmead Historical Park in Livonia, where the Motor City Irish Fest takes place Friday through the 9th. You get to see live local Irish bands, enjoy delicious food, fun games, and sample Irish whiskey. Of course, June is Pride Month, and the Motor City Pride Festival is Saturday and Sunday in Hart Plaza. So head out there to support the LGBTQ+ community. And the fun doesn't stop there. There's so much more to do around here, so here's a few more. Enjoy the weekend.
That'll do it for this week's One Detroit. Thanks for watching. Head to the One Detroit website for all the stories we're working on. Follow us on social media and sign up for our weekly newsletter.